But did Si Ouey really eat people? I'm not so sure. I'm Kim, and this is Hung Channel.
Do you know the story of Thailand's most notorious name, Si Ouey, a man whose life of poverty, exile, and superstition spiraled into unspeakable acts, leaving a shadow that haunted generations? What if the legends you've heard about cannibalism and ghostly warnings were only the surface of a far darker reality? That behind every sensational headline, a drifting soul struggled, misunderstood, and feared. By the end of this journey, you'll see how a miswritten name, a life of isolation, and society's fear combine to create a chilling legend that still lingers in Thailand today. Chapter 1. A Miswritten Name and the Drifting Fate. Around 1927, Wang Lihui was born into a poor family in the Shantou region of Guangdong, China. He was the youngest of 4 siblings. His childhood was marked by hardship and frequent bullying. According to later statements, he had once heard a piece of folk superstition that consuming human organs such as the heart and liver could grant courage and strength. This idea buried itself deep within his mind. Around 1945, he was conscripted into the military and participated in the Second Sino-Japanese War and the subsequent Civil War. After the war, China fell into turmoil. On December 28, 1946, he secretly fled alone to Thailand, initially settling in the Thap Sakai district of Prachuap Khiri Khan province. Due to his Cantonese pronunciation, immigration officers mistakenly recorded his name Lihui as Si Ouey, which later became Si Ouey. From that moment on, this miswritten name became his official identity in a foreign land. In Thailand, he worked as a gardener, a laborer, and even slaughtered chickens at markets. However, his frail health made it difficult for him to endure physical labor. During the Cold War period, Thai society harbored suspicion and prejudice against Chinese immigrants, further isolating him. With low family, low support, and low ability to communicate fluently, he drifted between Bangkok, Nakhon Pathom, and Rayong, living a life of loneliness and hardship. The miswriting of his name symbolized a deeper distortion of his fate. Having escaped the chaos of war in China, he instead fell into an even harsher marginalization in Thailand. The indifference of society, language barriers, and cultural isolation slowly eroded his hope for the future. Loneliness crept in like a shadow, quietly consuming his mind and laying the groundwork for the tragedy to come. Chapter 2. Poverty and Rejection. After arriving in Thailand, Si Ouey's life remained extremely difficult. He initially worked at docks or farms, carrying heavy loads, but his weak physique could not sustain such labor. He later moved to working in markets, plucking chickens or tending gardens, yet he was frequently mocked and insulted by customers and co-workers. His identity as a Chinese immigrant, combined with language barriers and poor health, placed him firmly at the bottom of society. Each failed job attempt and every rejection deepened his sense of isolation. At the time, structural prejudice against Chinese immigrants was widespread in Thailand, and Cold War paranoia intensified xenophobic sentiments. He was often treated as a potential threat. With no family support and no stable residence, He survived on meager earnings. Hunger, humiliation, and helplessness became his daily reality. Psychological pressure seeped into his mind like poison. Memories of childhood bullying and folk superstitions from China resurfaced, gradually twisting his perception of survival. Long-term poverty did not only strip away material stability, it destroyed dignity. Moving between Prachuap Khiri Khan and the outskirts of Bangkok, he endured harsh working conditions while his health continued to decline. These accumulated failures nurtured a growing darkness within him, shaping a mindset that would later deviate from normal behavior. The cannibal image later promoted by the media was, in part, a product of society's tendency to demonize outsiders. Si Ouey's struggle reflected a broader reality, the harsh survival of immigrants in a foreign land where poverty and rejection acted as invisible cages, devouring hope and fostering the seeds of tragedy. Chapter 3: Superstition and the Temptation of Death. Si Ouey's childhood was deeply influenced by folk superstitions. He had heard that consuming the organs of executed criminals could cure illness, strengthen the body, and increase courage. Within the extreme survival conditions of wartime China, such beliefs became a psychological anchor for him. After arriving in Thailand, his frail health, constant hunger, and isolation intensified this obsession. Strength and vitality became urgent necessities for survival. In his mind, blood and organs, imbued with supernatural properties by folklore, represented a possible salvation. Starting around 1954, suspicious behavior linked to Si Ouey began to surface in Prachuap Khiri Khan and other areas. His psychological state gradually drifted away from rationality. Loneliness became a catalyst, transforming belief into action. He began to believe that certain acts could restore life and strength. Children became his targets, as they were easier to lure. Although the media later portrayed his actions as a series of horrific child murders, Si Ouey repeatedly stated in his confessions that his actions were driven by a desperate desire for strength, health, and survival, not purely malicious intent. At the time, society's suspicion toward immigrants magnified his behavior. Language barriers and psychological pressure during the trial may have distorted his confessions, further pushing public perception toward extremes. From a drifting young man in a foreign land, he gradually descended into darkness, making the tragedy inevitable. Chapter 4: Crimes and Media Amplification. Between 1954 and 1958, multiple child disappearance cases occurred across Thailand. Si Ouey was accused of involvement in approximately 6 to 7 cases spanning Prachuap Khiri Khan, multiple cases, Bangkok, Nakhon Pathom, and Rayong. In January 1958, he was caught red-handed by villagers in Rayong province while burning the body of an 11-year-old, some sources say 8-year-old boy. A knife and bloodstains were found at the scene, making this the only case with concrete evidence. After his arrest, he confessed to multiple cases through translation. He admitted targeting children due to their vulnerability and at one point mentioned tasting human flesh, though he later denied cannibalism. Most of the other cases relied solely on his confessions, lacking direct physical evidence such as missing organs. Some timelines and details remained questionable. However, the media quickly sensationalized the case, labeling him a cannibal and serial child killer, shocking the entire nation. The trial began in March 1958. Initially, he was sentenced to life imprisonment after confessing. However, following an appeal by the prosecution, the appellate court overturned the decision and sentenced him to death in 1959, based solely on the Rayon case. Upon hearing the verdict, Si Ouey collapsed. On September 16, 1959, he was executed by firing squad at Ban Quang Central Prison at the age of around 32. Rumors later suggested flaws in the judicial process, including language barriers, lack of legal representation, and absence of family support. Combined with anti-Chinese sentiment and media exaggeration, he was transformed into a national monster. Although he was officially convicted of only one murder and never legally convicted of cannibalism, the public image had already been firmly established. Fact and fear intertwined, turning Si Ouey into a symbol of collective terror. Chapter 5: The Preserved Body and the Culture of Fear. After his execution in 1959, Si Ouey's body was transferred to Siriraj Hospital's forensic department. Professor Songkran's team removed his brain for examination. The body was then preserved with formalin, soaked in preservation fluid for a year, and later waxed periodically to prevent decay. Eventually, his body was displayed upright in a glass case at the Songkran Nyomsane Forensic Medicine Museum. A sign prominently labeled him as Manusekenken, Cannibal. In the dimly lit exhibition hall, visitors faced the dry, darkened, and twisted figure, often feeling unease and dread. This preserved body became one of the museum's most famous exhibits, blending crime, death, and medical education. Parents would warn misbehaving children, Si Ouey will come and eat your liver. Over time, his story evolved into a widespread childhood nightmare. Folklore continued to grow, stories of his ghost appearing at night, calling out in dreams, or wandering through the streets. In the 2000s, films and media further popularized the cannibal image across Thailand. For 61 years, this preserved body remained on display. Society, perhaps unknowingly, used it to reinforce fear, discipline, and moral boundaries. The exhibit reflects deeper issues: prejudice against Chinese immigrants and overlooked flaws in the justice system. Under dim lights, Si Ouey stood silently, shaping generations of fear surrounding crime and death, becoming an enduring shadow in Thai culture. Chapter 6: Cremation and Modern Re-Evaluation. In the 21st century, society began to re-examine the Si Ouey case. In 2019, a petition on Change.org called for the removal of the Cannibal label. Siriraj Hospital responded by changing the description to a neutral one and later removed the body from display in August of the same year. On July 23, 2020, Ban Quang Central Prison and Buddhist monks held a cremation ceremony at Wat Bang Phraik Thai Temple in Nonthaburi Province. 9 monks chanted prayers. Paper flowers were placed before the coffin. The prison director personally ignited the cremation furnace, while hospital officials and former residents attended the ceremony. This marked the end of 61 years of public display, symbolizing a shift toward respect for the deceased and a reassessment of cultural attitudes. Despite state-supported arrangements, no relatives came forward to claim him, highlighting the profound loneliness that defined his life. Modern scholars and documentaries suggest that only the Rayon case had solid evidence. Other confessions may have been influenced by translation errors, interrogation pressure, or coercion. Many cases lacked physical evidence, and cannibalism was never formally proven. Combined with anti-Chinese sentiment, language barriers, and media exaggeration, Si Ouey may have become a scapegoat or even the victim of a miscarriage of justice. His story serves as a reminder: while death ends a life, a name can linger in collective memory, transforming into legend, fear, and cautionary tale. In the end, Si Ouey became not just a man, but a mirror reflecting prejudice, justice, and humanity itself.
I'm Kim. Please subscribe, like, and share. And stay with me. You'll never face the dark unknown.